The girl by the road. It was one of those bitter winter nights, the kind where the cold feels like it's chewing through the seams of your clothes. I'd stopped at a gas station just before entering a long stretch of empty road, hundreds of miles of nothing but asphalt and darkness ahead. I grabbed a hot coffee, a sandwich, and a pack of smokes. It was the last stop for hours. They say that route, Highway 73 through the Northern Ridge, is cursed. I'd heard stories from other truckers. People vanishing, strange lights in the woods, ghost hitchhikers. I always thought it was just long-haul folklore, the kind of things you tell new drivers to give them a scare. I didn't believe in any of that, not until that night. I was an hour in, cruising slow and steady through the dark. The road was empty. My headlights stretched forward like two thin blades cutting into the black. I reached for a cigarette and glanced down for just a second. When I looked back up, I nearly slammed the brakes. A girl was standing at the side of the road. She looked out of place, barely 20, lightly dressed in what looked like a thin tank top and jeans. Her hair was wet and tangled, her skin pale. She lifted her arm and waved slowly, not frantically, just gently. My chest tightened. I didn't stop. I panicked, hit the gas, and drove past her like she wasn't real. I kept telling myself she couldn't be. No one would be out there dressed like that. Not in that weather. But about 10 minutes later, the guilt started creeping in. What if she was real? What if she'd been hurt? Left there? I knew the next station was over 2 hours away, and with the temperature dropping below freezing, she wouldn't make it long. I turned the rig around. She was still there. Same spot, same wave. I pulled over and opened the passenger door. She didn't speak at first, just climbed in slowly, teeth chattering. Her face was bruised, and she looked like she could barely stay awake. Finally, she mumbled something about a group of men who picked her up earlier. Said they gave her something in her drink, beat her, took her bag, and left her there. She looked like hell. Her lip was cracked, one eye half shut from swelling, and her skin felt like ice. I wrapped my spare jacket around her and drove straight to the nearest town hospital, which was still about an hour away. I kept talking to her just to make sure she stayed awake. When we got there, the nurses rushed her in. The police came to talk to her after. I gave my statement and stayed for a while. She was too weak to say much more, but I knew she'd be all right. I've seen a lot of bad things on the road. Accidents, fights, even a guy who tried to rob me once. But nothing stuck with me quite like that night. If I hadn't turned around, I don't know if it was fate or just a fluke. But I'm glad I went back, because on that stretch of haunted highway for once, the real horror wasn't something supernatural. It was just the cold and the cruelty of people. And if I hadn't stopped, she probably would have died out there. The road that looped. I've been a long-haul trucker for over 20 years now. Snowstorms, tornado warnings, deer on the highway. You name it, I've handled it. But nothing ever messed with my head quite like what happened in the winter of 2016. I was hauling a shipment of steel beams through northern Montana. It was late January, and the sky had been coughing snow for hours. I was used to that, had chains on, had extra fuel, and my onboard nav system, which was more reliable than any phone app. But that night, the GPS started acting up. The screen kept flickering, recalculating, rerouting me in circles. I figured the storm was interfering with the signal, so I pulled out the old paper atlas I keep under my seat. I thought I'd memorized the route. Just a few small roads through the hills before reconnecting to the main highway. Easy enough. I took a turn down what I believed was the right way, and kept driving. That's when things got weird. The snow got thicker, the road narrowed, and then, about 2 hours later, it just ended, right at the edge of a cliff. There were no warning signs, no guardrails, just a sudden drop into darkness and a whole lot of pine trees below. I sat there for a moment in stunned silence, engine idling, steam rising off the hood. I figured I'd made a wrong turn somewhere, so I threw it in reverse, turned around, and started heading back the way I came. Only, I ended up at the same cliff. Again. I checked the map, checked the GPS. Nothing made sense. It was like I'd driven a full circle, even though there was no loop in the road. Tried again. Took a wider detour through a side road I swore I hadn't seen before. Drove for miles in silence, windshield wipers keeping time with my rising panic. And somehow, again, I ended up back at the damn cliff. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Everything outside looked the same. Trees like tall shadows. Snow coating the ground so thick that it erased any detail. No landmarks, no lights. Just the endless white and the sound of my own tires crunching over ice. For a moment, I thought maybe I was losing it, like the snow had swallowed the world, and I'd been dumped into some Twilight Zone rerun. It was nearly midnight when I saw the headlights. Dim at first, just a glow in the distance, then growing brighter. A semi just like mine coming from a direction I didn't even know existed. I flashed my lights, honked twice, and pulled over, hoping he'd stop. He did. We talked for a minute. He looked at me like I was nuts when I told him where I'd come from. Said there wasn't any road back there, just forest. He even pulled out his GPS to show me. According to it, I'd been driving through solid terrain. I didn't argue. I just followed his taillights until we hit a small town around 3 a.m. I parked and stayed the night in the cab, too shaken to do anything else. The next day, I called my boss. Told him I got caught in the storm and had to take a longer route. He was pissed I was 12 hours late, but I didn't care. Because to this day, I don't know where I was for those missing hours. I don't know how I kept ending up at that cliff. And I don't care if nobody believes me. All I know is something was off that night, like I drove out of the map and into something else entirely. Passenger. I used to drive cross-country routes through northern Mexico, mostly hauling auto parts from the border to industrial parks down south. The job paid well, but it wasn't for the faint of heart, especially when you had to drive through Route 45 at night. That road has a reputation. People talk. Stories go around. I never paid much attention. Until that night. I had just picked up a late load and was scheduled to drive overnight. The sky was black, the road was emptier than usual, and I was running on coffee and cold tortas. Somewhere between Zacatecas and Durango, I got a call from my supervisor. She was a tough woman, always nitpicking over every little thing. I didn't even want to pick up, but I answered on the hands-free. Her voice came through staticky and tense. She told me I wasn't allowed to have passengers in the truck. Company policy. I rolled my eyes and told her I was alone. But she repeated herself, said she could see I had someone with me, said there was a woman sitting next to me in the passenger seat. That's when I got this sick feeling in my gut, because I was alone. I hadn't picked up anyone. I never do. I laughed it off, blamed it on bad signal, and cut the call short. Then the messages started coming in. Texts, notifications, all from dispatch. I ignored them at first, cranked the music, tried to keep my mind focused on the road. The cabin felt unusually cold, even with the heater on full blast. I remember glancing at the passenger seat every now and then. Nothing there. Just my backpack and a spare jacket. I stopped a couple hours later to use the restroom and grab a snack. That's when I finally looked at my phone. I had dozens of messages from dispatch. Most were just repeats telling me to pull over, but the last few had pictures attached. Images from the internal camera inside the truck. The one mounted on the dashboard, facing the driver and passenger seats. And there she was. In every photo, a woman was sitting next to me. Pale face, long dark hair, wearing tattered clothes. Old, like something from a different era. Her face was drawn tight, eyes sunken, mouth slightly open like she was trying to speak. But the worst part was her expression. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was empty. Just this blank, decayed stare aimed directly at me. I froze. My fingers went numb just holding the phone. I ran outside, looked through the passenger window from the outside. Still nothing. I opened the door, shined a flashlight through the whole cab. Empty. But I swear, the air in that cabin felt different. Thicker, heavier, like something invisible was sitting there still watching me. I didn't want to get back in the truck, but I had no choice. I had a delivery to make. I drove the rest of the night white-knuckled, barely blinking, checking the seat over and over. When I got back to the depot 2 days later, they asked me to review the security footage. I didn't want to, but I did. The video showed her appear out of nowhere. 1 second the seat was empty. The next, she was just there. She never moved, never blinked, just stared at me the entire time. Then, as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished. No fade, no exit, just gone. That woman is well known by truck drivers. They call her La Dama de Blanco. She's an apparition which is said to scare truckers on the San Felipe Road. I never thought she would appear in my truck. I was lucky I didn't see her while driving, because if I had, I would have probably ended up crashing.